Please like our video and subscribe to RotoWire. Then go to rotowire.com/pod for a free 10-day trial.
Welcome to a Thursday edition of the RotoWire NBA podcast. Nick Whalen joined back again is James Anderson, I guess I should say. James, you politely rejected my request to talk about All-Star Weekend. I kind of figured you would go down that path. If there was ever an All-Star game that you, of all people, who's not really an All-Star person in the first place, if there was ever one that you wouldn't pay attention to, I would guess that it was this year's.
Yeah, I mean, I was also sort of like on vacation during it, and did not really catch my attention a whole lot, but I did see some highlights.
I'm sure you saw it today too. It was the lowest rated All-Star game ever, or at least in like modern TV numbers, which is not surprising at all. Again, you're partially responsible for that. So, the reason I brought you on, I want to play a little Would You Rather. I came up with a list here of just kind of general NBA Would You Rathers. Some of them pertain to players, some pertain to teams, some of them pertain to bets. So we'll just kind of rifle through those. If you don't want to answer any of the questions, just hit me with a pass. We'll move right on. But we'll try to get through as many of these as we can in 30 or 40 minutes, and then if we have time at the end, finish out with a little bit of prospect talk as we look toward conference tournaments this weekend, and then of course the NCAA tournament next weekend. But number one on the list, James, would you rather have LaMelo Ball or Ja Morant for the next 5 years?
Man, that's a good one. I think that's the question that's on everyone's mind.
Yep. A lot of people have been asking that recently.
Really the big question, I think, in the NBA right now.
Will those two be traded for each other?
Man, I think I would take Ja. But it's really tough. I mean, I think LaMelo he's almost easier to fit on any team, and I think he's maybe a better playoff piece, like if he kind of hits his ceiling than Ja is. But just kind of seeing what Ja did last year with that Grizzlies team, even more impressive in terms of lifting them in the regular season than what LaMelo's done with this year's Hornets team. And I mean, they're both so fun to watch. I mean, Ja's really, really fun to watch. I think LaMelo's size is what kind of makes it really close for me, and LaMelo's defensive abilities. Like he'll get beat plenty, but when he's really dialed in, he can make a lot of plays on that end of the court. And Ja is kind of more of a one-way player, but I'll go with Ja just ever so slightly, but I reserve the right to change my mind in like a week.
This is really surprising. I honestly thought this would be an easy LaMelo for you. You've been as high on him as anybody.
Yeah, but I think you gotta. Maybe it's just me trying to not get too carried away. I mean, I did pick, when we were doing our all NBA teams for like 5 years from now, I had Ja on the first team and LaMelo on the third team. So, I mean, LaMelo has been even better than he was when we did those, especially lately. But, I mean, it's super close. It might just come down to which one of them is the more reliable 3-point shooter.
Right. And right now that's Ball by a mile, but that could also fall off at some point. I mean, Morant is shooting 23% from three on the year. That to me is a pretty big concern.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you want me to say LaMelo, I can say LaMelo.
Look, I think I'm going to say LaMelo. When I wrote this question, I had Morant in mind, and when I started doing the comparison, it's like I think I don't know. Like I think Morant is maybe underrated as a passer. Like he's averaging more assists per game than Ball. That's kind of all we talk about with Ball. But I think Ball is super underrated as a shooter, and Morant is probably a little bit overrated as a scorer. I mean, he had those two huge games early on, and then the injury happened, and he went like 10 straight games without even scoring 20 points. And that's not everything, but the shooting percentages are concerning. And I think if you just look at their rookie seasons, like as great as Morant was last year, I think LaMelo's had a better rookie year than Morant did, right?
You've swayed me. Me. I'm coming over. I mean, I got to do it for my guy.
Yep.
I don't want to be an anti-Ja guy by any means, but
I think this is more pro LaMelo than anti-Ja.
Yeah. You swayed me. I'm going to go. I was like 51-49 Ja. Now I'm 51-49 LaMelo in the span of 30 seconds worth of evidence from you.
Okay, this is an aside. I don't actually have this as part of the script here, but where does Zion now factor into this? Because I think a couple months ago I had said that I would take Morant over Zion. I have now definitely flip-flopped on that. Where are you at on Zion relative to these other two guys? Like if you had to rank them, 1 through 3 as assets. I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot with this.
I think I'd go LaMelo. I mean, I think Zion's got just such a low floor, like for the physical stuff. I mean, I know it's been a really nice run, but still wouldn't be at all surprising probably to anyone if there was some sort of big injury coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And like he's kind of one big injury away from like you sort of worrying about it affecting his career,
Mm-hmm.
whereas like LaMelo could have a major injury, but I don't think anyone would be worried about it affecting his career. And I think LaMelo, like I keep coming back to sort of the defense. Like LaMelo just makes plays on defense, and I mean the shooting. Like LaMelo is just such an easy player to build around. Like you've seen it. It took the Pelicans some time to kind of figure out what to do with Zion, and now it looks great. But he's still sort of a challenging player to build around. Like LaMelo, you could put anyone around him, and he's going to make them better. And he doesn't need the ball at all times. He can close out games. I think what he did against the Suns a few weeks ago to just kind of single-handedly beat them with scoring down the stretch, I think that really sort of opened a lot of people's eyes. Like this is more than just like a really good passer. This is the guy that can go get his shot at the end of games. So I think I'll go LaMelo there.
Okay, yeah, the physical stuff with Zion is a good point. I mean, the other two just simply don't have the bodies that you're worried about with that. Who would you trust of these three to be the biggest difference maker for a title contending team down the stretch? Andre Drummond, LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin.
Oh man,
not really a would you rather, but you get the gist.
I guess I wish I could say I'd seen LaMarcus play much this year. I have not. I'm gonna pass on this one. I think they're all I think they're all guys that are gonna be pretty big negatives when they're out there for you in a playoff series. So I would take Jeff Green over all three of them.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, I should have included Jeff Green. To me, it's Drummond by default because I don't trust Aldridge physically. He's looked terrible this year. He's basically played like 25 minutes. I think there's been some disagreement between he and the coach, like the Spurs coaching staff, as to where he's actually at physically. But he's looked bad. I mean, we've talked about Blake. I think that I don't think the Blake thing's going to be a disaster for the Nets. I just think it's not going to matter at all. I don't think he's going to help or hurt them. So like by default, I feel like there's a chance Drummond could go somewhere. And just because there's so many center needy teams or just needing some sort of depth, like if he can just give you even 10 good minutes out of the 20 that he's out there, I feel like that's going to be more than Aldridge and Griffin can offer.
Yeah, but I think of those three, he's the most delusional about how good he is, and that's the last thing you want in a playoff series is someone who is trying to do stuff they shouldn't be trying to do. I just worry that he would. Because he doesn't defend anywhere close to his physical abilities. Like I think you put him against any good offensive center and he's going to get worked. and you can't really play him against non-true centers. And if he gets the ball on offense, like, have you seen some of the stuff he's tried on offense? Like where he gets the ball kind of like 18 feet from the hoop and just kind of goes into his like ISO game. It's really bad. So I just wouldn't trust him. At least with those other two, I know that they're not going to do something crazy.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's what I've told people that have asked me about Blake. It's like, look, he's not gonna magically be back to averaging 26 and 6 in Brooklyn, but like I think he at least has an understanding of where he's at this point. Like I don't think he's gonna kill them. So yeah, that's a fair answer, especially for one that started with a pass. I believe earlier this season you were on record saying that you would take the Lakers over the field. So as of right now, would you rather bet the LA Lakers to win the title or bet the field? And that field, of course, includes the Brooklyn Nets.
Thank you. Yeah, I would take the field. I hope when I said that Anthony Davis was fully healthy.
He was.
I believe he was. Yeah, that injury is kind of scary, and I think they've got, and since then I think it's also become clearer that some of the pieces they brought in are just not guys that are going to help them win playoff series. And then you get kind of into like, what are they going to do in terms of moves? Like, I mean, are they willing to just jettison Montrezl Harrell somewhere for like a Trevor Ariza type of player? I mean, I don't know. Like it's all of a sudden looking like a pretty shallow roster. And Anthony Davis, like when I said that, I thought I was going to get 2020 playoff bubble version of Anthony Davis in the playoffs. And now I'm not confident in getting that player at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's almost exactly what I would say as well. The Davis component, I'm more worried about the injury and how long that's going to linger as opposed to what his mindset, is going to be.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think if he's 100% in the playoffs, I'm not worried about him, not being there. But I think him being out of the lineup, like immediately went from like, wow, this Lakers team is so deep. They added all these guys, and suddenly, for whatever reason, you take away Anthony Davis, and all those guys just started to look like a shell of themselves. I mean, Marcus Gasol completely washed up. That one is not that big of a surprise, but like Anthony Davis is out of the lineup. Montrezl Harrell is still playing like 21 minutes a game. That's kind of shocking to me that he's not able to be on the court for longer than that. And I think the Lakers knew his limitations, but I think he's maybe even a little more limited than they thought he was. When you're playing against him, I think it's different than playing with him. Wes Matthews is on year 2 of being completely washed up. Schroeder's been fine, but like you said, their only real option at this point is to kind of try to sell somewhat high on Talen Horton-Tucker, who some teams still like, or kind of sell medium, I guess, on Kyle Kuzma, who you signed to an extension, a very tradable extension. But if Kyle Kuzma is the centerpiece of whatever deal you're making, I mean, who's the best player you're getting back from him? Like a PJ Tucker type, that's not going to go get you a borderline all-star.
Yeah, and I mean, it's going to be tough. Rob Pelinka's got his hands full, which is not a good place to be.
No, well, this is what happens when you have to sign the KCP extensions and you get the post LeBron friends title bump. Like things dry up pretty quickly from a money perspective. All right, would you rather have the Minnesota Timberwolves pick? If you're the Golden State Warriors, I should preface this. You are the Warriors. Would you rather have the 2021 Minnesota pick, which is top 3 protected this year, unprotected next year, or would you try to trade that for a borderline all-star player? Somebody I came up with is like John Collins, and I know you're probably not all that high on John Collins, but you have to factor in the possibility that Minnesota keeps that pick this year. They're the second worst team in the league right now, and then next year that pick could become a lot less valuable in the unlikely event that Minnesota is somewhat competent. So basically, if you're the Warriors, how are you handling that pick?
Well, the whole contract situation kind of gets complicated with if you're acquiring someone like John Collins. Like, what's the outgoing salary there? Because I mean, they're already pretty deep into the tax as is, and I don't think they want to get rid of like I think Wiggins and Oubre are fitting in pretty well there. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I think they'd happily get rid of Wiggins. I don't think a team like the Hawks is really interested in Wiggins.
Sure. I wanna hold that pick because there's a less than 40% chance or a less than 50% chance. Like, isn't it like around 40% or something that it finishes top three or that it lands?
Yeah,
in the top
something
three?
like that. And I misspoke, by the way. Minnesota does have the worst record right now, so they're in the driver's seat to have the best odds. But yeah, like you said, this isn't 5-10 years ago when that it's a lot more favorable.
I mean, if it just lands 4 or 5, like that's just a monster asset. And I mean, there are like having the 5th pick in this draft is going to be like the best 5th pick like ever, at least pre-draft in terms of what people are expecting. So I would just roll the dice and hope that you get that pick at 4 or 5. I think that I'd try to trade like James Wiseman for something rather than trade that pick for something.
So that was going to be my next question. Is like, knowing what we know about Wiseman right now, you would rather have the 4th or the 5th pick, whether if that could turn into Jalen Suggs or Evan Mobley or Jonathan Kuminga.
Yeah, I would take all 5 of those guys over Wiseman without question.
Okay. All right. Looking at the Western Conference playoffs. For the purposes of this exercise, I'm going to assume that Utah, Phoenix, LA, Portland, Denver, and Dallas are in the playoffs. I mean, there's a decent chance that teams like Portland and Dallas, who knows what could happen there. But with those 7 locked in, would you rather bet Golden State, San Antonio, or Memphis to get the 8th seed? Or another team?
All right. I got to pull up my standings here. Leaning Golden State, but
I feel the same way.
I mean, I think the Spurs are frisky. Let's see. So, okay, yeah, they're bunched up. I want to say that the Spurs had a pretty easy schedule so far, if I'm remembering correctly. So I think they might be playing a little bit above their heads. I know they have the best record of those 3. I'll go with
I believe San Antonio has 11 back-to-backs remaining, and they finish out with 4 games in 5 nights to end the year. So their schedule is as tough as anybody's from a games played in a short period of time perspective.
Yeah, I'll go with the Warriors.
Okay, I'm with the Warriors as well. I don't know. I feel like they have by far the best player out of any of those 3 teams. I don't think San Antonio is going to go in the tank here at all. I don't think the Aldridge thing really matters. Like, he's really hasn't given them any value this year. And it does kind of feel like after a 1-year blip, they're back to being, some of the parts, basically what they've been doing the last 20 years. And they don't have the top end talent that they had for a lot of that run, but it does feel like some of the Spurs magic is back. And, I don't see them winning a series. I don't think they're going to knock off a 1 or a 2 seed, but for me, I think I would go in that order: Golden State, San Antonio, Memphis. I mean, the Grizzlies, just like last year, are still kind of hanging around, but it doesn't look like we're getting Jaren Jackson back anytime soon. They're still being weird about that. Sounds like 3 weeks at the minimum. And by that point, you're talking like 20 games left.
Yeah. I mean, the Grizzlies are really deep, which is helpful.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Warriors, like they had that game. Like, I think they're better. They're better than 19 and 18. Like, they had like Kelly Oubre was just like the worst shooter ever. Like the first couple weeks of the season, and then they had that like Draymond game where he just like single-handedly cost them a win. So I just think they're better.
Yeah, I think if Curry stays healthy, they're the team, and they probably grab that 7 or 8. Would you rather, going forward, have a core of Devin Booker, McCall Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, or Jamal Murray, Michael Porter, Nikola Jokic?
Jokic, Murray, Porter.
How close?
I mean, I mean, I'm not high on Ayton at all. I'm not that high on Porter either, but
Right.
like Jokic is just way better than Booker, and
Okay.
I don't really see Booker catching him. And I actually might like Bridges, like Bridges and Murray. Like I think Bridges is my third favorite player of those
Right.
six to build around.
That's why I chose Phoenix. I started with Denver, and I wanted to find one that I thought was fairly close. And yeah, I know you're a Bridges guy. I'm a Bridges guy. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you that like Jokic is so much better than anyone that Phoenix has that I think that kind of has to be the trump card. But I think I like the 2 and 3 better. Like I'm still fairly high on Ayton, and it's kind of a completely different type of core. But the 2 and 3 guys, I think for both are comparable in different ways.
I mean, the Murray is just such a postseason player.
Right.
Like he's just like, is Devin Booker ever going to have a playoffs as good as Murray's playoffs last year? Maybe.
Is Devin Booker ever going to be in the playoffs? Yeah, I don't know.
I at least I've seen this Nuggets core get pretty darn close to the finals, and I mean, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Would you rather have the number 5 pick in the 2021 NBA draft or Tyrese Halliburton?
The pick.
Really? Okay, see, I started with number 3 and then I bumped it down to 4 and then 5 based on what you had said like 10 minutes ago. Really?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're just getting so much more upside. Like Halliburton is a really nice player. I think that was one of the worst draft falls we're ever going to see. But you're getting a potential multi-time All-Star at number 5, like a potential third or second team All-NBA player at number 5. Whereas Halliburton, I think you're just getting a really, really, really nice starter. But I don't know if Halliburton's ever going to make an All-Star team as good as he is. And like I kind of think it's going to be either Suggs or Green at 5. And I'd say Halliburton I'd say Suggs has a higher floor and a higher ceiling than Halliburton. And I think Green has just such a ridiculous ceiling that I'd be willing to roll the dice there.
Okay, fair enough. I don't know. I don't know where I would draw the line here because I think Halliburton has been so good that even if he's never an All-Star, which I think I would take the over on 0.5 All-Star games for his career, just based on the level that he's starting at right now. I just think we've seen, like, I know this is a great draft. The chances that all 5 of the guys that go 1 through 5 turn into perennial All-Stars, just isn't that good. And obviously all it takes is hitting the right one at that pick. Yeah. But like at number 5, like at number 1, number 2, number 3, I'm okay with shooting for the upside. But like at 5, and I understand this is somewhat of like a double draft. There's just so much talent at the top. But look, if you can give me a guy who's 21 years old and is basically 50, 40, 90 already, and just looks like a complete revelation as in his rookie season, like I'm pretty high on Jalen Suggs, but like, is Jalen Suggs going to look this good right away? I don't know. Maybe he will.
Well, I think he will look better than this when he's Halliburton's age.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's going to be younger as a rookie than Halliburton was.
True.
And like Halliburton is an excellent complementary player, but those are guys like you can get complementary players like in free agency. Like you can sign a Fred VanVleet or Alonzo Ball. Like you can't sign a superstar in free agency. You have to draft them. And that's your shot at drafting one.
Okay. Fair enough. I guess I would just prefer the known quantity in this situation. Last one before we get to some draft talk. Would you rather, and this kind of pertains to one that we've already talked about, would you rather bet against the Lakers or the Nets to make the finals? So basically, which of those teams do you think has a better chance to not make the finals?
The Lakers. I mean, I think the Nets are pretty much a shoe-in, like barring an injury.
I think so too. I think it's become underrated how much talent they have. I think it's kind of insane that we're not talking about them as more of a favorite.
I think people are getting there. I think like people are kind of coming around on that. I think people didn't want to like disrespect the Sixers or
right
disrespect the Bucks. But I mean, let's get real. Like Pat Connaughton might be in a closing lineup against the Nets in that series. Right. So like, come on.
Well, for one, Durant hasn't played in forever, so I think that's played into it. It's been a while since we've actually seen them at full strength, and we've only seen that for like 3 or 4 games. And then the other thing is, unlike these other super teams that have come together in the last decade, is they're not relying on Pat Connaughton to be the fourth option. It's like you still have Joe Harris, you still have Bruce Brown, who's looked really good. They're not the deepest team in the league, but like even having a competent guy like Blake now to be your 7th or 8th guy. Jeff Green has looked fine for them. Like it's not a complete clean out where it's just 3 guys doing everything and then you're relying on a bunch of like borderline G leaguers. Like they still have like a pretty legitimate roster. And once you get to the playoffs and you're not asking Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot to give you 20 minutes a night and the rotations kind of shrink a little bit, I think they'll be even more dominant. Like I'd see them just ripping through the East as of right now, at least.
And I think the Clippers and Jazz, at least, and you could maybe even add like the Suns, are going to be better playoff teams than the Bucks and the Sixers and the Celtics. Yeah. So
I think the Lakers. I mean, the Lakers are great. They won it last year. No, not to take anything away from them, but they're just more vulnerable. I think Brooklyn has so much scoring. You have 3 of the top like 6 ISO scorers in the league, and maybe 1 and 2 in Harden and Durant. I just don't see them. Like if one of those guys has an off night, you have 2 guys to cover it. And like with the Lakers, if LeBron and Davis aren't playing really well, they can get beat by just about any team on any night because the supporting cast just isn't there. And I know there's some defensive concerns with the Nets, but I think before the deadline with buyouts or trades, whatever it is, I think they shore that up a little bit. All right, let's look at a couple guys to keep an eye on for the 2021 NBA draft. I don't want to go too deep. I don't know how much you've studied up on a lot of these guys. Obviously, there's a lot of baseball going on these days. But where are you at on Cade Cunningham overall? I think he's probably been the most visible of the top prospects this year.
Yeah, he's a stud. He's just a really good scorer. He's the type of player you need, like, at the highest level. Shooting has really been probably better than expected. He's got just awesome touch around the basket. He can score from like anywhere on the court, and he's got that size to just, I don't think he's going to be a great defender in the NBA, but just at that size, it's kind of like a LaMelo Ball type of thing. Like you can only be so bad if you're 6'7" and you're active and you got long arms. So I mean, he's just a total stud. I'm excited to see what they do in the tournament. It kind of reminds me of that Kevin Durant Texas team a little bit, where it's just this one man show, and he's probably just so much better than everyone else that he'll probably take them to the Sweet 16 just by himself. But I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how teams defend him. Like, it's going to be like a double team trap, I would imagine, like as soon as he crosses half court in some of these games. So
I mean, the rest of the team isn't that bad, but at the same time, it's funny when you watch them, like for a guy who's 18, 19, like everyone else on the team is more than happy to defer to him on every single possession. Like that, it's very clear what the hierarchy is there.
Yeah. But I mean, he's a good, like he seems like a good team player in that context. Like, I mean, he's kind of bought in, it seems, and he's hitting the open guy. Like he's not really forcing it a ton. He's just that much better than everyone else. So, I mean, I'm not sure if he would be my number one guy yet, but I think he will be the number one guy just because he's got that number one primary scorer, primary ball handler mold that every team is trying to acquire.
The size is intriguing. I mean, he plays center a decent amount. I mean, there'll be possessions where he'll bring the ball up, pass it off to the wing, and then immediately go and post up like right under the basket. And he's got really nice touch. He can fade away. I think he could add some weight. I mean, I think he's like 6'8", 220. Looks pretty skinny. Obviously, he'll fill out, I think, as he gets older. But it's super unique player because he's not a fantastic athlete by any means. He's not super fast. But I also don't think he's, I was looking at comparisons today, and like some people threw out like Kyle Anderson, and he's like Kyle Anderson, but he's like 1.5 speed Kyle Anderson. Like he's kind of the similar size, but I mean Kyle Anderson was moving like molasses at UCLA, and obviously he's found a spot in the league. But Cunningham has a little bit more to him. I do think. I think he's the safest of the elite guys just because he pretty much does everything well. He has the great size. Like you said, I think you're spot on. Defensively, he's never going to be a first team all defense guy. But when you're that big, you can only be so bad. I do wonder though, I think you watch Jalen Suggs, you watch Jalen Green, you watch Kuminga. Athletically, those guys are on another level. And, if you're not 7'1" Nikola Jokic or 7'1" Joel Embiid, it's pretty tough to be like a superstar ball handler if you don't have that athleticism. And the counterpoint to that maybe is Luka Doncic, but I'm not quite sure he's on that level as a shot creator and a passer.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely more kind of Doncic Harden from an athleticism standpoint, but that's sort of why I'm not willing to kind of say like he's definitely the guy, because it is when you have 5 like number 1 caliber guys, it is kind of weird to take the worst athlete of the 5, number right. 1. But I mean, like Kuminga's kind of the other guy that I'd consider there. I mean, I think Evan Mobley. I think there are certain teams that might take Mobley 1 just because
he's a monster.
Like if the Cavs got the number 1 pick, like they might take Mobley, or teams that aren't necessarily desperately looking for that primary ball handler might consider Mobley. It's just going to be such a fun draft. Like this top 5, I don't think there's ever been like such a clear cut. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes there's like a clear cut top 2 or a clear cut top 3. But there's usually a bit more. There's kind of like a 1A and like 1B. Like to me, there's like 5 1As here, and it's just going to be so fascinating to see what order they go in.
It's going to be fascinating which team that finishes like 11th or 12th inevitably jumps up to like 4 or 5. I think like Chicago last year, New Orleans has done that a couple times. Like, I mean, if the Pelicans or the Kings or even like Atlanta, if any of those teams struggle down the stretch and they're picking 3 or 4, and all of a sudden you're adding one of these guys to that core, it's going to be crazy.
And it's going to be really complicated and potentially make some waves just because like you could be drafting a guy that's better, like that has a better long-term outlook than like De'Aaron Fox or
right,
maybe even like Trae Young or something like that. And like those guys like obviously consider their teams, and they're not looking to be all of a sudden the second best player on their teams by a guy that's never played in the league before. So it's just going to be really fascinating to see how it unfolds.
What do you think about Jimmy Butler as a comp for Cunningham? I know you don't really think of him as a wing. I mean, he is more of a ball dominant guy. But when I watch him, like he doesn't remind me of other point guards, and a lot of that is the size. I remember early on people compared him to Simmons because of his body. I don't really think that's accurate. The 2 guys that really come to mind in terms of current players are Butler and then SGA, kind of that pace that SGA plays with. But like those times when Butler closes games and is the primary ball handler, like the way he stops and starts, the way he can back guys down, he can fade away. He's not going to blow you away and blow by you and dunk. Athletically, those are the 2 comps, and size wise, he does kind of size up pretty well with Butler.
Yeah, that's Butler's about as good as I've heard for a comp on him. Obviously, the shooting and the defense are quite different, but everything else does kind of stack up. I mean, well, yeah. I mean, I don't want to shortchange Cunningham as a passer.
Yeah.
I mean, he's better at certain stuff than Jimmy Butler has ever been, and certainly was as a college player. But and he's never going to be the defender that like peak Jimmy Butler was. But just from an athleticism and a size standpoint, I think that's a really good one.
Yeah, Mobley's a guy I'm going to be watching a lot this weekend. I think inevitably he's going to be compared to Wiseman and Ayton. I mean, maybe it's just recency bias. I think he's a way better prospect than those guys.
Yeah.
And with Wiseman, we didn't get a full season of Wiseman. Who knows what that would have looked like? But I mean, I've said this before. I think Mobley is what people think DeAndre Ayton was. I mean, Mobley does not take games off. He's a vastly better defender. He averaged like 3 blocks a game. He was averaging 4 blocks a game for like a 10-game stretch in the middle of the year. I mean, he is every bit the athlete, if not more, than Ayton. And I think he's already more comfortable doing more offensively. I mean, Ayton has kind of turned into this like 1998 center at this point. And I think we thought he would have more to his game. And I don't mean to bash DeAndre Ayton, but he went number 1 in a draft that he shouldn't have gone number 1 in. And I don't think Mobley goes number 1, but he's going to be, I think, a huge bargain wherever he ends up.
Yeah, man, he's really fun. I want as many of these guys to go to good organizations that know what they're doing as possible, because I just, I'm worried about some of these guys maybe having their careers altered by them just landing in a terrible spot.
Evan Mobley, Mason Plumlee front court.
Yeah, well, I mean, Detroit's a great spot in the sense that from day one it would be clear, whichever of these 5 guys went to Detroit, that like this is the guy.
Hopefully,
I would think so. What do you think about like for in terms of comps? Like Jalen Green to me is kind of fascinating because he's just such a ridiculous athlete and scorer. Like I do kind of get the like rookie year Kobe Bryant vibes with Jalen Green a little bit. I don't think he's going to be that type of winner or that type of defender, but I mean, in terms of a guy that can just fill it up that easily and is that type of nuclear athlete, like it's tough to think of one.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that, but I don't mind it. I mean, the problem is you can't, if you're writing or on a podcast, you can't be like NBA comparison, Kobe Bryant. Like that's just not, like, it's just not an option, unfortunately. And you're pretty much going to get destroyed if you say something like that. But I mean, the guy might go number 1 in the draft. Kobe went what, like 11, 13, something like that. I mean, I don't think it's that crazy. And I don't know. I mean, you're going to hear like Donovan Mitchell when you just start looking at measurables and athleticism and, kind of that 1-2 guard type of player. But yeah, I mean, I think he's a better athlete than maybe both those guys. Like, I guess I don't remember how wild of an athlete Kobe was early on. I guess like when I think of Kobe, I don't think of him as like a Vince Carter type of athlete. But I mean, is that where he kind of was in the mid 90s?
Yeah. I mean, when he won the dunk contest and stuff, he was pretty freaky. I mean, that's what's so great about all 5 of these guys. Like, I mean, Kuminga and Kawhi Leonard is probably like the most spot on comp out there.
Yeah.
But they're all kind of so good. Like when the better a prospect is, the tougher it is to find a good comp for them. And these 5 guys are just so good that it's tough to find good comps. Green is just, I mean, he's the type of guy, like, I think he's what people who were highest on Anthony Edwards thought Anthony Edwards was going to be.
Yeah.
Like he could lead the league in scoring one year.
Right. He's just so much more polished at this age already.
Yeah.
One comp that I did see a while back for Jalen Green is a good version of OJ Mayo. Which I think based on the size and like the hype, like people forget how hyped OJ Mayo was. Like OJ Mayo was like a mega prospect. I
know, but like OJ Mayo is like a B- NBA athlete at his peak athleticism. Like Jalen Green's going to be one of the best athletes as soon as he gets into the league.
OJ Mayo legitimately peaked as like a sophomore in high school.
Yeah, he did.
Is there anyone else in the tournament now that the G League season is already wrapped up? We might not see much of Suggs and Kuminga for a while now. I don't know what they're going to do between now and the draft, but anyone else that you're looking forward to watching? And like James Bouknight at UConn has been really fun. Gonzaga has a few guys. Suggs we talked about. Corey Kispert maybe going to be a mid-first round kind of shooting specialist, Joe Harris type. Scotty Barnes at Florida State. Is there anyone else that I'm missing?
Well, yeah, those two Gonzaga guys, like I Kispert would probably be my pick at number 6 right now, just because of his floor. Like I just like if you're getting Joe Harris, I'd rather have Joe Harris at 6 than any of the other guys. I haven't done too deep a dive on that sort of second and third tier, but I mean, I think Kispert's just a guy who is probably going to get underdrafted because people are going to be like, well, we know what this is, but I think he's going to be just a knockdown shooter. And I think I'm going to pick the Zags to win the tournament. So I'm going to be watching a ton of Zags. And like Jalen Suggs, I think it's funny. I think people that really follow college hoops closely, like just assume Suggs is going to be like a top 3 pick. I mean, I think he's probably the most likely guy to go 5th right now. So, but with like a monster tournament, he could push himself into that conversation to go number 1. So I think that's just going to be really interesting to watch.
Right. And that's the thing with Kuminga and Green, they can't really do a whole lot outside of, I'm sure there'll be some sort of like private scrimmages between now and late June and, combine measurements and things like that. But they don't have the opportunity to lead a team to the Final Four and put up 35 points in a Sweet 16 game, or something like that. So that's going to be interesting to watch. I have to say, I haven't seen much of Moses Moody at Arkansas. I mean, I've seen him listed in a lot of top 10s. That'll be a deep dive for another time. I am still fairly high on Jalen Johnson, a Wisconsin kid who went to Duke and obviously got killed for leaving the team a couple weeks ago. But the quitter, the quitter. I think he's going to be one of those guys that, like, every time I watched him at Duke, I was like, this guy needs more space. Like, he's not a great shooter, and he looks like an NBA player physically already. He's an insane athlete, pretty good passer, great rebounder, kind of does it all. But just, I think he's one of those classic guys that like just will be better suited for the NBA game. And I don't know how much leaving Duke and their struggles are going to affect his stock, but I would be happy to take him if he's still on the board in like the early 20s.
I don't know, man. I'm not a big fan of quitters.
You think he's going to quit the NBA?
I think he's gonna quit his NBA team when things aren't going well. He's just gonna quit.
Oh my God, that was a horrific like 3 days on Twitter where everyone felt that they had to weigh in on that situation. Have you watched Dosunmu at Illinois?
No. Okay. I think I can say I've watched 0 Big Ten basketball so far.
That hasn't been a bad decision. So it's been getting pretty ugly. We got Wisconsin back on the board tonight, and my expectations I think are lower than ever. All right, well, let's cap it here. We'll get more into draft talk. Maybe after the tournament, we'll kind of do a recap of who improved their stock, and obviously once the draft gets closer, we'll continue to dive into that. But appreciate you taking the time. Obviously, baseball's picking up, so I know it's not easy to always step away for 45 minutes, but appreciate it.
Yeah, no problems, man. Thanks for having me on.
All right, you bet.
Please like our video and subscribe to RotoWire. Then go to rotowire.com/pod for a free 10-day trial.